The sun came up over the Kansas plains on the morning of March 11, 1918, the same way it always did. Before we go any further into this story, if you want a brand new American mystery every single night, subscribe. One tap and a new story is waiting for you every evening. Cold light spilled across frozen fields. The sky was pale and wide and empty. Nothing about that morning felt like the end of anything. And yet, somewhere out on those flat Kansas plains, in a place called Camp Funston, a cook named Albert Gitchell woke up feeling wrong. His head ached. His throat burned. His body felt heavy, like his bones had been swapped out for something denser overnight. He got up anyway. He put on his uniform. He walked to the mess hall because that was what you did. You showed up. You did your job. The army expected nothing less. By noon, over 100 men had reported to the camp infirmary with the same symptoms. By the end of the week, that number would be 500. By the end of the month, the world would never be the same again. This is the story of the deadliest plague in modern human history. It killed somewhere between 50 and 100 million people. Some estimates go higher. It swept across every continent on Earth. It reached the Arctic. It reached the Pacific Islands. It reached places so remote that the outside world had barely touched them. And it may have started right there in a Kansas Army camp on a cold March morning when the sun came up the same as always, and nobody knew what was coming. The thing that makes this story strange is not just the scale of the dying. Plagues have come before. Plagues will come again. What makes this story strange is what happened after. The silence. The agreements made in back rooms. The newspapers that chose not to print what they knew. The army reports that disappeared into filing cabinets and stayed there for decades. The name they gave the sickness, a name designed, some say, to point blame at a country that had nothing to do with it. They called it the Spanish flu. Spain had nothing to do with it. And that is where this mystery begins. Picture Camp Funston in your mind. It sits in the middle of Kansas on the Fort Riley Military Reservation, out where the land flattens into something almost abstract. The sky above it is enormous. The wind comes in from the northwest, and it does not stop. In March March of 1918, the camp held somewhere around 54,000 soldiers, young men from every corner of America, packed together in long wooden barracks that smelled of sawdust and coal smoke and damp wool. They slept in rows. They ate in rows. They drilled in rows out on the frozen parade ground, while their breath rose in white clouds above them. These were the boys America was sending to the war in Europe. The Great War. The war that was supposed to end all wars. They had been training all winter, waiting for the order to ship out, waiting to cross the Atlantic and do their part. They were healthy and young and full of purpose. Most of them had never been sick a day in their lives. And then Albert Gitchell walked into the mess hall. Now, here is what we know for certain. The first recorded case of the 1918 influenza pandemic was logged at Camp Funston on March 11, 1918. That is not a theory. That is in the medical records. An army doctor named Edward Schreiner wrote it down. The date, the symptoms, the patient. He filed his report the way doctors do. He expected someone to take notice. Nobody did. What happened next is the part that has haunted historians and scientists and ordinary people for over 100 years. Because the sickness did not stay in Kansas. It traveled. It followed those young soldiers onto the trains that carried them to the ports. It followed them onto the ships that carried them across the ocean. It walked off the gangplanks with them in France and England and Belgium. And there, in the mud and misery of the Western Front, it found exactly the conditions it needed to become something far worse than a bad winter cold. The world in March of 1918 was already broken in a dozen ways. 4 years of war had done that, but something new was moving through it now. Something quiet, something patient, something that did not care about borders or uniforms or the names of kings. It had started in Kansas, and it was just getting started. Kansas in March is not a gentle place. The wind comes down from the north like something with a grudge. It moves across the flat open land without anything to stop it. No mountains, no tall trees, just mile after mile of brown winter grass bending low under the weight of it. The sky sits heavy old pewter, and the cold has a particular quality out there on the plains. It doesn't just touch your skin. It gets inside your coat, inside your collar, inside your lungs. You breathe it in, and it feels like swallowing something sharp. This is the world Albert Gitchell woke up into on the morning of March 11, 1918. He was a cook, a mess cook at Camp Funston, a United States Army training base built on the flat grasslands of central Kansas, just outside the small town of Junction City. The camp sat on land that belonged to Fort Riley, a military post that had been there since the Civil War era. But Funston was newer, rower. It had gone up fast, the way things go up when a country is in a hurry. Picture it. Long rows of wooden barracks, freshly cut lumber still pale and bright against the brown earth. Mess halls built to feed thousands of men at once. Long tables, long benches, the smell of coffee and boiled meat, and wood smoke drifting through cold morning air. The buildings were plain and functional, the kind of structures that exist only to serve a purpose and make no apologies for it. Tin roofs, small windows, mud paths between buildings that froze hard at night and turned soft and dark by midday. Tens of thousands of young men lived there. Boys from farms in Iowa and Ohio. Boys from the streets of Chicago and St. Louis. Boys who had never been far from home, now sleeping in bunks stacked close together, sharing blankets and mess kits and the same recycled air. They wore heavy wool uniforms, dull olive green, and wide-brimmed campaign hats. Their boots were thick leather, laced to the ankle. In the mornings, they drilled in formation on the frozen ground, their breath rising in white clouds above their heads, like something being released. The camp could hold 50,000 men at its peak. In the winter of 1918, it was close to that number. Albert Gitchell had been up before dawn, the way cooks always are. The mess hall would have been lit by bare electric bulbs strung along the ceiling, casting a flat yellow light across the long tables. The smell of the place in the early morning was particular. Coal smoke from the stoves, the faint, sour smell of yesterday's meals still in the air, the clean, cold draft that came in every time a door opened. He would have been moving through that familiar routine, the one that his his hands knew without thinking when something stopped him. He felt wrong. His head ached. His throat was raw. His body had that heavy, waterlogged feeling that comes when a fever is just beginning to climb. He had a temperature of 104 degrees. He reported to the camp infirmary the way the rules said he should. That was the first domino. By noon that same day, more than 100 men had reported sick with the same symptoms. By the end of the week, that number had grown past 500. The infirmary was not built for this. The army had to convert other buildings, clear out space, set up rows of cots where there had been nothing before. Men lay side by side in the pale winter light, coughing into the cold air, their faces flushed and damp. The land around the camp was wide and still and indifferent to all of it. The wind kept moving. The sky stayed that flat pewter color out past the edges of the bays. The Kansas plains stretched away in every direction, empty and enormous, the way they had always been. Cattle grazed on distant farms. Smoke rose from chimneys in Junction City. The world looked exactly the way it always looked. But inside those wooden buildings, something had begun. The mess hall where Gitchell worked that morning still smelled like coffee and coal smoke. The long tables were still set for breakfast. The electric bulbs still swung slightly in the draft from the door. Everything looked ordinary. Everything looked like just another cold morning in a long winter. It was not. Something had arrived at Camp Funston. It had no name yet. It had no face. It was invisible and patient, and it had just found the perfect place to grow. 50,000 young men, close quarters, cold air, and soon a train station that would carry them to every corner of the world. Camp Funston sat in the middle of Kansas like a small city that had appeared overnight. In a way, it had. The army built it fast, the way the army builds everything in wartime, with urgency and noise and very little ceremony. Raw lumber, tar paper roofs, wooden barracks lined up in long straight rows across the flat ground. By the winter of 1918, more than 50,000 men lived inside those rows. They slept in bunks stacked close together. They ate at long tables, shoulder to shoulder. They breathed the the same cold air, shared the same latrines, wore the same olive drab wool that scratched at the back of the neck. The men who came to Funston came from everywhere. Farm boys from Iowa who had never been more than 30 miles from home. Young men from Chicago who had grown up in the noise and press of city streets. Sons of immigrants who spoke English with their parents' accents still soft in their mouths. They were 18, 19, 20 years old. Most of them had never held a rifle before the army put one in their hands. One of those men was a cook named Albert Gitchell. You already know his name. He was the first, but he was not alone that morning, and the men around him matter just as much. There was a mess sergeant named Ernie Faust. He was a solid, practical man, the kind who kept things running without being asked twice. He had a habit of arriving before anyone else, checking the coal in the stove, making sure the coffee was hot before the first wave of men came through the door. He wore his uniform neat and his boots clean. He believed in order. He believed that a well-run kitchen was a kind of moral statement. That morning, he noticed Gitchell looked pale. He told him to sit down. Gitchell said he was fine. He was not fine. There was a young private named Raymond Bliss, 19 years old, from a small town in Ohio. He had arrived at Funston only 3 weeks before. He still wrote letters home every Sunday, sitting on the edge of his bunk with a pencil and a piece of paper balanced on a hardcover Bible. His letters home were cheerful. He described the food. He described the cold. He said the other men were good fellows. He did not say he was homesick, though he was. You could see it in the way he looked toward the window sometimes, toward the flat gray horizon, as if he were trying to see something familiar in all that empty sky. There was a doctor named Edward Schreiner, a camp physician who made his rounds every morning through the infirmary. He was a careful man, methodical. He kept detailed notes in a small leather-bound book he carried in his breast pocket. He had a habit of pressing 2 fingers to a man's wrist and counting quietly, his lips moving just slightly. He had seen a lot of sick men come through his infirmary that winter. Colds, influenza, the usual misery of a military camp in February. He was not alarmed yet. He would be the people inside Camp Funston that winter. Ordinary men doing ordinary work in an ordinary place. Gitchell stirring pots. Faust checking his coal. Bliss writing his Sunday letter. Schreiner counting pulses. They had no idea they were standing at the center of something enormous. Nobody does when they are standing at the center of something enormous. That is always how it works. Outside the wooden walls of the barracks, the Kansas wind moved across the ground in long, cold sweeps. The sky was the color of old pewter. The parade grounds were hard with frost. Somewhere across the base, a bugle sounded. Men pulled on their coats and stepped out into the cold, their breath rising in small white clouds above their heads. They were young and they were strong, and most of them believed they were going to France to win a war and come home again. That was the plan. That was always the plan. The world was going to make sense. The sacrifice was going to mean something. You could see it in the way they walked, straight-backed, quick-footed. The way young men walk when they still believe the future is a place they are moving toward on purpose. Gitchell reported to the infirmary that morning with a fever of 104 degrees. Faust followed him an hour later. By noon, the line outside the infirmary door had grown long. Dr. Schreiner opened his small leather book. He pressed his pencil to the first clean page. He began to write down what he was seeing. He did not know yet what he was writing down. He only knew there were too many sick men, and the number kept growing. By the end of that first day, there were over 100 men in the infirmary. Cots lined the walls. More cots filled the center of the room. The air smelled of wool blankets and rubbing alcohol and the faint sweetness of fever sweat. Dr. Schreiner moved from bed to bed. He checked temperatures. He wrote down numbers. The numbers kept climbing. But here is the thing about Camp Funston in those early days of March 1918. Life did not stop. It never really stopped. The camp was too big and too busy and too full of purpose for one sick cook and a long line at the infirmary to slow it down. There were 30,000 men at Funston, maybe more. 100 sick men was a rounding error. The army had a war to run. The bugle still sounded at 5 in the morning. Men still rose in the dark and laced their boots and filed into the mess halls for breakfast. The smell of coffee and fried salt pork drifted out across the frozen parade grounds. Steam rose from the kitchen vents and curled up into the gray Kansas sky like smoke from a slow fire. The cooks moved fast, the way they always moved, filling tin trays and sliding them down the long metal counters. Thousands of men ate shoulder to shoulder at long wooden tables. They talked about the war. They talked about home. They talked about nothing at all. The easy chatter of men who have been together long enough to run out of new things to say. After breakfast came the drills. The men marched in long columns across the hard ground, their boots striking the frozen earth in unison. A sound like distant thunder rolling in from the flat horizon. Sergeants called out commands in voices that carried half a mile in the cold air. The men moved in formation, turned in formation, stood at attention in the cutting wind without complaint. They were being shaped into something. They could feel it. There was a kind of pride in that. Even on the coldest mornings, even when their fingers went numb inside their gloves. The barracks were long wooden buildings, low and plain, set in rows across the camp, like the lines of a ruled notebook. Inside, the bunks were stacked too high. Each man had a footlocker and a small shelf, and not much else. The buildings were heated by iron stoves that glowed orange at night and threw long shadows across the ceiling. In the evenings, men played cards by lamplight. They wrote letters home. They read whatever they had brought with them, paperback novels and dog-eared magazines and Bibles worn soft at the spine. The air inside was warm and close, thick with the smell of boot leather and tobacco smoke, and the particular human warmth of many bodies in a small space. This was the rhythm of the place. This was the ordinary world of Camp Funston in the winter of 1918. It was not glamorous. It was not comfortable, not exactly. But it was steady. It had a pulse you could set your watch to. And then, quietly, that pulse began to change. By the second day, the number in the infirmary had doubled. By the third day, it had doubled again. The men who came in were not just tired or cold. They had fevers that spiked fast and burned high. Their heads ached behind the eyes. place hurt in the deep way that goes past muscle and settles into bone. Some of them had a cough that started dry and turned wet by nightfall. Dr. Schreiner kept writing. The pages of his small leather book filled up faster than he expected. The men who were still well went about their days. They drilled, they ate, they slept. They did not know that the man who had handed them their breakfast tray 3 mornings ago was now lying in a cot with a fever of 103. They did not know that the man who had slept in the bunk above them had reported to the infirmary that morning and had not come back. The camp was too large for that kind of knowing. Information moved slowly inside those long, straight rows of barracks. Rumor moved a little faster, but even rumor needs time. By the end of the first week, more than 500 men were sick. Some accounts put the number closer to 1,000. The infirmary had run out of cots. Men lay on blankets on the floor. The smell of the place had changed. It was heavier now. Closer. Dr. Schreiner stood in the doorway one evening and looked out at the rows of sick men and felt something he could not quite name settle over him like the weight of a coming storm. He picked up his pen that night and wrote a single line at the top of a fresh page. He underlined it twice. The line said, "This is not ordinary." Dr. Loring Minor was not a man given to alarm. He had spent years working in the flat, wind-scoured counties of western Kansas, where the nearest hospital was sometimes a full day's ride away. He had set broken bones by lamplight. He had delivered babies in snowstorms. He had watched scarlet fever move through a farmhouse and take 3 children in a single week. He knew what sickness looked like. He knew its smell, its color, the particular way it moved through a room. And what he was seeing at Camp Funston did not look like anything he had seen before. The fever came fast. That was the first thing. Most fevers build slowly, like a fire that needs coaxing. This one arrived all at once, like a door blown open by wind. A man would feel fine at breakfast and be shaking on a cot by noon. His face would go red, then gray. His eyes would water. His lungs would fill with something thick and stubborn that no amount of coughing could clear. Minor wrote it all down. The onset time, the color of the skin, the sound of the breathing. He wrote down the names of the men and the dates they reported sick, and the dates they either recovered or did not. He was building something on those pages, a record, a shape, the kind of shape that only becomes visible when you step back and look at all the pieces at once. He sent a report up the chain. He used careful language, the kind of language a man uses when he wants to be taken seriously. He described the unusual speed of the illness. He described the number of cases. He noted that the pattern did not match influenza as it was commonly understood. He asked for attention. He asked for resources. He asked in the polite and measured way that doctors ask, for someone above him to look at what he was looking at. The report went up, and then it went quiet. No response came back down. No orders. No additional staff. No inquiry from the medical corps. The pages Miner had written with such care moved through the system, the way a leaf moves into still water. It made a small ripple. Then the surface went smooth again. He waited. He kept seeing patients. The numbers kept climbing. He wrote another report. He used slightly less careful language this time. He described the situation as serious. He used the word alarming. He sent that one up too. The camp around him moved at its usual pace. Bugles sounded in the gray morning air. Boots hit frozen ground in long, even rows. Smoke rose from the mess hall chimneys in thin white columns against a pale sky. From a distance, everything looked exactly as it was supposed to look. The machinery of the camp turned and turned, steady as a clock. But inside the infirmary, the blankets on the floor were still full of men. The smell had not changed. If anything, it had deepened. It had taken on a sweetish, heavy quality, the kind of smell that clings to wool and doesn't wash out. The nurses moved between the rows with wet cloths and quiet voices. They had learned to step carefully. The floor left very little room. Miner stood at his desk one afternoon and looked at the stack of pages he had written. He looked at the reports he had sent. He thought about the silence that had come back in return. He was a practical man. He did not spend much time on feelings he could not use. But something sat in his chest that afternoon that felt a little like the moment before a storm breaks, when the air goes still and the birds stop and the whole world seems to hold its breath. He picked up his pen again. He started a new page. He wrote down the date. He wrote down the number of current cases. He wrote down his observations about the progression of the illness in the men who had been sick the longest. He wrote carefully and completely, the way a man writes when he suspects that someday someone else will need to read what he has written. Outside, the Kansas wind moved across the flat land and pushed against the walls of the barracks. The long, straight rows of buildings stood against it, solid and gray and indifferent. The flag above the parade ground snapped and pulled at its rope. The sky was the color of old pewter, low and close, pressing down on everything beneath it. Miner kept writing. Nobody came. Out past the camp gates, past the long wire fences and the guard posts, and the smell of diesel and coal smoke, the land opened up flat and wide and went on forever. This was Haskell County, Kansas. This was farm country, and the people who lived here had been watching the sky and the soil and the animals for generations. They knew things that no doctor had written down yet. The hog farms sat low along the creek bottoms. Big operations, some of them. Hundreds of animals in close pens, shoulder to shoulder in the cold mud. The smell of them carried on the wind for miles. In winter, when the air was still and heavy, you could smell a hog farm from the next county over. It was a thick, living smell, warm and sour and deep. The farmers who ran those operations had noticed something in the months before the camp got sick. Their hogs were getting ill. Not all of them. Not in a way that wiped out a whole herd at once. But there was a cough moving through the pens. A wet, rattling cough that sounded almost human. Animals that had been strong and fat went thin and glassy-eyed. Some of them died. The farmers buried them and didn't talk about it much, because farmers don't talk about losses if they can help it. But they remembered. There was an old man named Elmer who had farmed that land since before the railroad came through. He sat on the steps of the general store in Copeland on a cold afternoon in March of 1918 and told anyone who would listen that he had seen something like this before. not exactly like this, but close enough to make him uneasy. He said his father had told him about a sickness that moved from the pig pens to the chicken coops to the farm hands, back in the years after the war. The other war, the one that ended in 1865. He said his father always believed the animals got it first, that the animals were like a warning bell that nobody knew how to hear. The men at the store listened. Then they talked about something else. There had also been dust storms that winter, bad ones, the kind that turned noon into dusk and packed the grit into every crack and corner of every building for miles. The sky would go the color of rust, a deep orange brown that swallowed the sun whole, and the wind would scream across the flat ground at 40 miles an hour and carry with it everything that wasn't nailed down: topsoil, chaff, the dried waste from the hog pens, all of it lifted up and scattered across the land and into the air that people breathed. Some of the older women in the county talked about this quietly, in the way that women talk when they know something, but also know that saying it plainly will get them dismissed. They said the dust carried things. They had always believed this. Their mothers had believed it too. That when the land was sick, the sickness got into the air, and the air got into you, and there was nothing to be done about it except wait for the rain to come and press it all back down into the earth where it belonged. A local doctor, a man named Loring Minor, had actually written about this. He had sent a report to the State Health Board in February of 1918, before the camp even reported its first cases. He had seen sick people in the county, farmers and their families, a cough that hit hard and fast and left people weak for weeks. He thought it was worth noting. He sent his report. The state board received it. They filed it. They did not follow up. Nobody wanted to hear a theory that started with hog farms and dust storms and old men on store steps. It wasn't the kind of story that fit into any official report. It didn't have clean edges. It didn't point to a single cause or a single moment. It was the kind of story that spread out in all directions, like water soaking into dry ground, and disappeared before you could get a good look at it. But the people who lived there knew what they knew. They had watched the animals. They had smelled the wind. They had seen the dust rise up and swallow the sky. And when the sickness came rolling out of Camp Funston and started moving east, the old-timers in Haskell County looked at each other across their fence lines and their feed stores and their church pews, and they did not look surprised. They looked like people who had been waiting for someone to finally ask them what they saw. There is a version of this story that the newspapers of 1918 never printed, not because they didn't know, because they agreed not to. That sounds like something a person would say to sound dramatic, but it is simply what happened. The United States government asked the press to hold back, and the press, by and large, said yes. To understand why, you have to go back a little further than March of 1918. You have to go back to the mood of the country, the feeling in the air, the particular kind of silence that settles over a nation at war. America had entered the First World War in April of 1917. The whole country had leaned into it. Boys were signing up. Mothers were buying war bonds. Factories were running through the night, lit up orange against the dark sky, hammering out shells and rifles and boots and belts. The country had made a decision. It was going to win this war, and nothing was going to be allowed to get in the way of that. The government passed something called the Sedition Act in 1918. Under that law, you could be arrested for saying things that hurt the war effort. You could go to prison for printing stories that made the army look bad. The law had wide edges. It covered a lot of ground, and newspaper editors across the country understood exactly what it meant. So when sick soldiers started filling the wards at Camp Funston, and when the reports started coming in from other camps, and when the numbers started climbing in ways that were hard to explain, the editors made a choice. They did not print it, not in full, not in a way that would make people stop and ask questions. They printed small notices, quiet paragraphs buried deep in the back pages. Nothing that would cause alarm. Nothing that would slow the trains carrying boys to the ports. Nothing that would make a mother put down her war bond and wonder if her son was safe. This was not a secret meeting in a dark room. There was no single order handed down from a single man. It was quieter than that. It was the kind of agreement that forms between people who all want the same thing. They wanted the war won. They believed the war could be won. And they believed that panic was the enemy of victory. So the story stayed small. It stayed local. It stayed in the files of county health boards and Army medical officers and state bureaus that nobody read unless they were looking for something specific. But here is the part that stretches back further than any of that. Further than the war. Further than the army camp. Further than the settlers who broke the Kansas ground and built their sod houses and planted their first rows of winter wheat. The land around Haskell County had its own memory. The Kiowa people had lived across those plains for generations before any soldier or settler arrived. They knew the wind there. They knew how it moved. They knew the way the dust could carry things, the way the air in that part of the country had a weight to it in certain seasons, a heaviness that settled in the lungs and made breathing feel like work. The Kiowa and the Comanche and the Cheyenne had all passed through or lived on that stretch of southern Kansas. They had their own accounts of sickness moving through animal populations, their own stories about years when the buffalo behaved strangely, when birds flew in the wrong direction, when the water in certain creeks had a smell that made the horses nervous. These were not stories that made it into any official record. They were passed down in the way that old knowledge gets passed down, quietly, from one person to the next, in the language of people who had learned not to expect anyone in power to write their observations down. The settlers who came later brought their own knowledge. Some of them listened to what the older residents of that land had to say. Most of them did not. Most of them were too busy surviving to sit with old stories about the wind. But the land kept its own record. It always does. The soil remembers what the newspapers agreed not to print. The dust remembers what the army filed away. The wind that blew across those flat brown fields in the winter of 1918 did not care about the Sedition Act. It did not care about war bonds or troop morale or the careful decisions of newspaper editors sitting in warm offices far away. It just moved the way it had always moved, carrying whatever it carried, crossing every fence line and every border and every agreement that men had made among themselves to keep certain things quiet. So someone had to name it something. That is how it always goes. When a thing spreads fast and people start dying and governments start getting nervous, someone reaches for a name. A name gives you distance. A name puts the problem somewhere else, in some other country, on some other people. A name lets you keep moving. The name they reached for was Spain. Now, Spain had nothing to do with it. Spain did not start it. Spain did not spread it. Spain was just a country sitting on the edge of Europe, fighting its own quiet battles, trying to keep its people fed, while the rest of the continent tore itself apart. Spain had not even joined the war. That was the key detail. That was the thing that made Spain useful. See, in the spring of 1918, almost every country involved in the war had passed laws about what the newspapers could print. In America, the Sedition Act made it a crime to say things that might hurt the war effort. In Britain and France and Germany, the rules were different, but the result was the same. Bad news stayed quiet. Sick soldiers stayed quiet. Mass death in the camps stayed quiet. The war had to keep going, and the men had to keep enlisting, and the people at home had to keep believing that everything was under control. So when the sickness started spreading through the Allied camps in the spring, the newspapers in France and Britain and America said almost nothing. A few small items buried in the back pages. Nothing that would cause alarm. Nothing that would make a mother in Ohio think twice about her son shipping out. But Spain was neutral. Spain had no sedition act. Spain had no reason to hide the numbers. And so when the flu hit Madrid and started filling the Spanish hospitals, the Spanish newspapers printed it. All of it. King Alfonso XIII got sick. His ministers got sick. The papers ran the stories because they could, because no one had told them not to. And the rest of the world read those Spanish papers and thought, well, it must have started there. It did not start there, but the name stuck. There was a journalist. His name does not matter as much as what he did. He was working for a small paper, not one of the big city dailies, and he had been following the story of the sick soldiers the way a man follows a thread he finds on the floor of a dark room. He pulls it slowly He does not know where it leads. He just knows it is there. He had read the Spanish papers. He had also read the dispatches coming out of France, the ones that made it past the censors, the ones that talked about soldiers falling sick before they ever reached the front. He had read the small notice about Camp Funston that ran in a Kansas paper in March. He had written letters to the Army Medical Corps and received polite responses that said nothing at all. He sat with all of this the way you sit with a puzzle that is missing most of its pieces. You can see the shape of the thing. You can see where the edges are, but the center is gone, and someone has made sure it stays gone. What he found was not a smoking gun. It was more like smoke without a fire you could point to. He found that the first confirmed cases in Europe appeared in Allied military camps, not in Spanish cities. He found that the timing matched the movement of American troops. He found that the Spanish press had simply been the first to report freely on something that was already everywhere. He wrote some of this down. His editors cut most of it. The war was still on. The rules were still in place. What ran in the paper was a quiet, careful piece that raised questions without answering them. Most readers moved past it without stopping, but he kept his notes. He kept the letters. He kept the dispatches with the dates on them. And the name Spanish flu kept spreading, the way the flu itself kept spreading, moving from mouth to mouth, crossing borders, sticking to things. Names are like that. Once a name gets into the air, it is very hard to get it back out. People needed something to call it. They needed somewhere to point. Spain was there. Spain was neutral. Spain was convenient. The wind that carried the sickness did not have a name. It did not need one. It just moved, the way it always had, the way it always would. The boys who crossed the Atlantic in 1918 were young. Most of them had never been more than 50 miles from home. They had grown up in small towns with names like Millbrook and Cedar Falls and Dry Creek. They had worked their father's land. They had gone to church on Sundays. They had never seen the ocean. Now, they stood on the decks of transport ships and watched the American coast disappear behind them like a dream fading at dawn. A soldier named Earl wrote home to his mother in Ohio. He he wrote about the ship. He wrote about how many men were packed into it, shoulder to shoulder, sleeping in hammocks, stacked 4 high in the dark belly of the hull. He wrote about the smell of salt water and engine oil, and too many bodies in a closed space. He said it reminded him of the grain silo back home in August, that thick, warm air that sat on your chest like a hand. He did not write about the coughing. Not yet. Another soldier, a boy from Georgia named Thomas, kept a small journal in his breast pocket. He wrote in it every night with a pencil stub he sharpened with his thumbnail. In one entry, dated sometime in the spring of 1918, he wrote that 3 men in his bunk row had gone to the ship's medical bay. He wrote that the medic looked tired. He wrote that nobody told them what was wrong with the 3 men. He wrote that the ship kept moving west to east, cutting through gray water under a gray sky, and that the horizon looked the same in every direction. A flat, dark line with nothing behind it. He wrote that it felt like the world had no edges anymore. The ships were called transports, but the men called them cattle boats. They were not wrong. The army needed to move 1 million men across the Atlantic, and it needed to do it fast. The war in Europe was grinding. The Allies were exhausted. American boys were the answer. So the army loaded them onto every ship it could find and sent them east, packed tight as cordwood, breathing the same recycled air for days on end. A nurse named Clara served on one of those ships. She was from Minnesota. She had trained for 2 years before the war and thought she had seen hard things. She had not seen this. She wrote in her letters home about the men who came to her with fevers that climbed so fast she could barely keep up. She wrote about the color of their skin, a blue-gray tint that spread across the lips and fingertips when the lungs stopped pulling in enough air. She called it the color of a winter sky just before dark. She said it was the strangest and saddest thing she had ever seen on a human face. She also wrote that she was told not to discuss the illness with the men's families. She was told it would cause panic. She was told the war effort required calm. She folded those instructions up and put them in her pocket and kept working. A soldier named Henry survived the crossing and made it to France. He wrote home only once about being sick. He said he had a bad few days. He said he was fine now. He said the food was terrible and the mud was worse, and he missed his dog. His mother kept that letter in a tin box on her kitchen shelf for the rest of her life. What Henry did not write, because he had no words for it and no permission to use them, was that he had watched 4 men in his unit die in a French field hospital in the space of 48 hours. He had watched them go from walking and talking to still and silent faster than he thought a person could go. He had held one man's hand near the end. The man's name was Robert, and he was from somewhere in Pennsylvania. And he had a photograph of a girl pinned inside his jacket. Henry never talked about Robert, not to his mother, not to his wife, not to his children. Some things a man carries alone, the way you carry a stone in your coat pocket, feeling its weight with every step, never setting it down, never quite knowing why. These were the witnesses, not generals, not politicians, not the men whose names ended up in history books, just boys from Ohio and Georgia and Minnesota and Pennsylvania, moving east across cold water, carrying something with them they did not know they were carrying. The ocean did not care. The wind did not care. The sickness moved the way it always moved, quietly, steadily, one breath at a time. By the time those boys reached France, the trenches were already waiting for them like open wounds in the earth. Picture it. Long cuts in the ground, stretching for miles in both directions. Mud the color of old rust. Water sitting at the bottom, cold and still and dark. The smell of wet wool and smoke, and something else underneath it all. Something you could not name and did not want to. The trenches ran from the English Channel all the way down to the Swiss border. 400 miles of dug earth. 400 miles of men living below the surface of the world. They had been there since 1914. 4 years of this. 4 years of sleeping in the mud, eating cold food, breathing air that tasted like chalk and iron. The men who had been there the longest had a look about them. Their eyes had gone quiet in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. They had seen things that did not leave a man the same way he was before. This was the world the American boys stepped into in the spring and summer of 1918. is where the pattern starts to take shape. Think about what a trench is, really. It is a long, narrow room with no roof and no door. Hundreds of men packed together, shoulder to shoulder, breathing the same air, sharing the same cups and blankets and cigarettes. Men who were already worn thin by cold and bad food and months without proper sleep. Men whose bodies had been working hard just to stay upright, just to stay warm, just to keep going one more day. A doctor would tell you that a body under that kind of strain is a body with its defenses down. The immune system is like a wall. Stress and cold and hunger are like rain on that wall, wearing it down a little at a time. By 1918, the men in those trenches had walls that were paper thin, and into that world came the boys from Kansas and Ohio and Georgia. Boys who had been crowded into camps just like Funston. Boys who had been sleeping in close quarters, eating in packed mess halls, drilling in cold fields. Boys who had been breathing the same air as Albert Mitchell and the 100 men who fell sick after him. The dates line up in a way that is hard to ignore. The first cases at Camp Funston appeared in early March of 1918. By late March, sick soldiers were being moved between camps all across the country. By April, the first American troops were arriving in France in large numbers. By late April and into May, reports of a strange respiratory illness were coming out of the French military. Then the British. Then the Germans on the other side of the wire. The same illness, the same sudden onset, the same bluish color around the lips in the worst cases, the same speed. Men who were fine at breakfast and gone by supper. People who had never met each other, writing in different languages, in different countries, describing the same thing. That kind of agreement across distance is not nothing. That kind of pattern does not appear by accident. The German army called it Blitzgewehr, lightning cold, because it moved through a unit like a flash of light through a dark room, there 1 second and everywhere the next. German commanders reported losing thousands of men to illness in the spring of 1918. Right at the moment, they were planning a major push forward. Some historians believe the illness may have slowed that push, may have changed the shape of the war itself. Think about that for a moment. A sick cook in a Kansas mess hall. A doctor who wrote it down and got ignored. A hog farm on the Kansas plains. And then, months later, the course of a world war bending slightly in a new direction because men on both sides of the wire were too sick to stand. History rarely moves in straight lines. It moves the way water moves, finding the low places, slipping through the cracks, connecting things that seemed like they had no connection at all. The boys from Funston carried something with them across the ocean. They did not know it. They could not have known it. They were just doing what they were told, going where they were sent, the way young men in wartime always do. But the sickness did not care about orders. It did not care about borders or battle lines or the color of a uniform. It moved through the trenches the way fog moves through a valley at dawn, low and slow and covering everything, touching every man the same. And that is the heart of it, right there. The sickness did not care about the things men care about. It did not care about nations. It did not care about flags or treaties or the lines that generals drew on maps. It moved the way wind moves. It went where it wanted. And in the spring and summer of 1918, it wanted to go everywhere. Think about what the world looked like then. Men were moving across it in numbers that had never been seen before. Ships crossed the Atlantic packed so tight that soldiers slept in shifts. Trains ran through France day and night, carrying troops to the front and wounded men back from it. Supply wagons rolled through mud. Messengers rode horses between command posts. Nurses moved from ward to ward in field hospitals that smelled of carbolic soap and blood. Everything was in motion. Everyone was touching something that someone else had touched. The flu found all of it useful. By late spring of 1918, the illness had spread from the American camps to the ports, from the ports to the ships, from the ships to France, to England, to Germany, to Spain. It moved through the Allied lines and through the German lines without asking permission from either side. It crossed the English Channel. It crossed the Mediterranean. It followed trade routes and troop movements and the invisible threads that connect one human being to another when they breathe the same air. There is something almost strange about how it moved. Not frightening, exactly. Strange. Like watching a river find its way through a field. You cannot stop it. You can only watch where it goes. By the summer of 1918, reports were coming in from all over the world. India, South Africa, New Zealand, places that had nothing to do with the war, places far from any battlefield, were reporting sick people. The illness had traveled on ships carrying grain and coal and mail. It had traveled with missionaries and merchants and sailors who had no idea they were carrying anything at all. It slipped into port cities first. Then it moved inland. Then it climbed into the mountains. Then it crossed the deserts. There was no wall high enough to stop it. There was no border guard who could see it coming. Some of the places it reached had almost no contact with the outside world. Remote villages in Alaska, islands in the South Pacific, small towns in the mountains of Norway, where the nearest neighbor was a mile away through the snow. The flu found them anyway. It found them because one person had traveled. One person had gone to the nearest town for supplies and come back with something they did not know they were carrying. That was all it took. One person, one breath, one handshake. The numbers are hard to hold in your mind. By the time the first wave had passed through the world, tens of millions of people had been sick. Most of them recovered. The first wave, as terrible as it was, had a kind of mercy in it. People got sick. They felt awful for a week or two. Then most of them got better. Soldiers went back to their units. Workers went back to their factories. Life, more or less, went on. But the flu had not finished. It was just learning. This is the part that the old stories always come back to. The part that the people who lived through it could never quite explain. The first wave felt like a bad flu season. Miserable, yes. Deadly for some, yes. But not the end of the world. People had seen bad flu seasons before. They thought they knew what this was. They did not know what this was. What they did not understand, what nobody understood yet, was that the virus was changing as it moved. Every new person it infected was a new chance for it to shift and adapt. It was moving through millions of bodies across 6 continents, and each time it moved, it was learning something new. It was becoming something different from what it had been in that Kansas mess hall in March. The world in the summer of 1918 felt almost hopeful. The war was grinding toward an end. The first wave of sickness had passed. People were tired, but they were still standing. They looked at the summer sky and thought the worst was behind them. The worst was not behind them. It was gathering itself somewhere out in the invisible spaces between one person and the next. It was moving through the low places, the way water always does, and it was getting ready to come back as something none of them had ever seen before. It came back in the fall, September 1918. The leaves were just starting to turn. That particular gold and amber light that comes in early autumn when the air smells like dry grass and wood smoke and something faintly sweet on the wind. People were going about their lives. Markets were open. Church bells still rang on Sunday mornings. The war was almost over. Everyone could feel it. And then the sick started dropping again. Only this time, it was different. This time, something had changed in the virus itself. Something had shifted in those invisible spaces between one body and the next. The second wave arrived like a different animal entirely. Faster, harder, more certain of itself. The first wave had been a warning shot that nobody recognized as a warning. The second wave was the thing itself, fully formed and moving with a kind of terrible purpose. Here is the detail that nobody has ever fully explained. The first wave, back in the spring, killed the people you would expect a flu to kill. The very old, the very young, people already weakened by something else. That is how influenza works. That is how it has always worked, going back as far as anyone can remember. The old and the fragile go first. The strong survive. That is the pattern. And it is a pattern so old and so reliable that doctors had built their whole understanding of disease around it. The second wave killed young adults, healthy ones, strong ones, men and women between 20 and 40 years old, people in the full strength of their lives, people who had never been sick a day, people who had survived the trenches and the mud and the gas and the rats. They were the ones who died fastest. They were the ones who died in the greatest numbers. The very people whose bodies should have been best equipped to fight off any sickness were the ones the second wave took most completely. Doctors stood at bedsides and watched it happen and could not explain it. A man would feel a chill in the morning. By afternoon, he was in bed. By evening, his lips had gone blue. Some of them were dead within 24 hours of the first sneeze. Others lasted a few days, their lungs filling with fluid until breathing became impossible. The doctors described it as drowning from the inside. The lungs would simply stop being lungs. They would fill and harden and go dark, and there was nothing anyone could do. The color blue keeps appearing in the accounts from that fall. Blue lips, blue fingertips, blue faces. The lack of oxygen turned the skin a color that nobody who saw it ever forgot. Nurses wrote about it in their diaries. Soldiers described it in letters. The blue color became the marker, the thing that told you the second wave had come to your town, your street, your house. And here is the part that sits in the mind and refuses to leave. The scientists who have studied this virus for over 100 years, with every tool modern medicine has built, have never agreed on a clean explanation for why the second wave targeted the young and strong. There are theories. There are educated guesses. One idea is that the immune systems of healthy young adults actually fought back too hard, that the body's own defenses became the weapon that destroyed it. A strong immune response flooding the lungs, doing more damage than the virus itself. The body defeating itself in its effort to win. It is a possible answer. It is not a certain one. What is certain is that the second wave moved through the world like nothing before or since. It crossed mountains and oceans and deserts. It reached villages in Alaska where no outsider had set foot in years. It found soldiers in the last weeks of a war they had survived for 4 years. It found nurses who had cared for the sick without flinching. It found young mothers and farmers and teachers and mill workers, people who had done everything right, people who had every reason to expect a long life. The first wave had been a sickness. The second wave was something else, something that did not follow the old rules, something that seemed, in its strange and terrible logic, to seek out strength rather than weakness. That is the impossible detail. That is the thing that sits at the center of this story and will not be explained away. Flu does not work that way. It never has before or since. This one did. And yet, some people looked at all of that and shrugged. You have to understand something about human nature. When something terrible happens slowly, people find ways to explain it away. They find reasons to keep going. They find arguments for why the thing happening to other people will not happen to them. It is not foolishness. It is survival. It is the mind doing what minds do when the alternative is too large to hold. In the fall of 1918, while the second wave was moving through American cities like smoke through a cracked window, some people kept their doors open. They kept their theaters lit. They kept their dance halls full on Saturday nights, the fiddles going, the floors warm with bodies, the air thick with perfume and sweat and laughter. They had reasons, good reasons, reasons that made sense if you stood in a certain light and squinted just right. The first argument was simple. The first wave had come and gone. People had gotten sick, yes. Some had died, but most had not. Most had coughed for a week and gone back to work. The skeptics pointed to that. They said the fear was bigger than the disease. They said the newspapers were exaggerating. They said the doctors were being cautious in the way doctors always are, seeing catastrophe where ordinary people saw a bad season. There is something to that. Fear does spread faster than any sickness. Panic has its own kind of contagion. And the skeptics were not wrong that some of the early reporting had been uneven, shaped by wartime rules about what could be printed and what could not. They had reason to distrust what they were being told. They had been lied to before. The second argument was about liberty. This was wartime America. Men were dying overseas for the idea that free people could live free lives. Closing a dance hall felt like surrender. Canceling a parade felt like letting the enemy win something. There was a real pride in staying open, in refusing to flinch, in showing the world that American cities did not scare easily. That pride was not nothing. It came from a real place. And the third argument was the most human of all. The skeptics simply could not believe that something invisible could move that fast, hit that hard, and choose its victims the way this one seemed to choose them. Strong young people, healthy people. It did not fit what they knew about sickness. Sickness took the weak. Everyone knew that. So, when the healthy young man down the street got sick and died in 3 days, the skeptics found other explanations. Bad luck, a weak heart nobody knew about, something else entirely. But here is the thing the skeptics could not explain. The cities that stayed open paid a price that the cities that closed did not. That is not a story. That is a number. Public health researchers spent decades going back through the death records, counting the bodies, mapping the timelines. The cities that closed their schools and their theaters and their gathering places early. The cities that told people to stay home and mean it. Those cities buried fewer people, not a few fewer, significantly fewer. The gap was wide enough to see from a great distance. St. Louis closed early. Philadelphia did not. You will hear more about Philadelphia in the next part of this story. But the short version is this. The difference in death rates between those two cities was not subtle. It was the kind of difference that sits in a ledger and does not move and does not argue back. The skeptics could not explain that gap. They could explain away one death. They could explain away a neighborhood. They could not explain away the shape of the whole country laid out in numbers, city by city, week by week, showing the same pattern over and over. The places that believed it early lost fewer people. The places that kept dancing lost more. That is the thing that makes even the doubters go quiet. Not the horror of it, not the scale. Those things can be argued with. Numbers can be questioned. But the pattern is harder to dismiss. The pattern has a kind of cold logic that does not care what you believe. It simply sits there in the old records, in the death certificates filed in courthouse basements across the country, in the names carved into stone in 1,000 small-town cemeteries. The skeptics had reasons. They were not monsters. They were people trying to hold their world together with both hands. But the pattern was real, and the pattern did not lie. Philadelphia knew. That is the part that stays with you when you read the old accounts. The city knew the sickness was coming. The doctors knew. The health commissioner knew. A man named Wilmer Cruson stood at a desk in the fall of 1918 and looked at the numbers coming in from other cities, and he made a choice. He decided the parade would go on. The parade was called the Liberty Loan Parade. It was meant to sell war bonds, to stir up pride, to keep the money flowing toward the boys overseas. The date was set for September 28th, 1918. 2 weeks before that date, sailors at the Philadelphia Navy Yard had already started dying. The flu had already moved through the barracks like smoke through a keyhole. The doctors at the Navy Yard had already sent word up the chain. They had already said plainly that something was wrong. Cruson called it under control. He said the public had nothing to fear. He said the parade would go on. 200,000 people lined Broad Street that Saturday. You can still find photographs of them. Men in hats, women in long coats, children sitting on their father's shoulders to see above the crowd. The sky was pale blue and cool, the way Philadelphia skies get in late September. That particular shade of autumn that feels like a gift. Flags snapped in the wind. Bands played. The crowd pressed together, shoulder to shoulder, breath to breath. The way crowds always do when something feels important. 10 days later, more than 1,000 Philadelphians were dead. Not from the war, from the flu. Within 6 weeks, more than 12,000 people in Philadelphia were gone. The city ran out of coffins. It ran out of gravediggers. Bodies waited in homes because there was no one to come collect them. Churches turned their basements into morgues. The smell of death settled over whole neighborhoods like a low fog that would not lift. Steam shovels dug long trenches in the cemeteries because there was no time for individual graves. Cruson never fully admitted what the parade had done. He kept saying the city had done its best. He kept saying no one could have known. But people knew. The doctors who had sent the warnings knew. The nurses who had watched the Navy Yard fill up with sick men knew. And the people of Philadelphia knew. In the way that ordinary people always know when they have been told a comfortable lie instead of a hard truth. There is a particular kind of person who does not let that go, who carries what they saw holds those two things up next to each other and refuses to pretend they match. Philadelphia had those people. The city was full of them after the fall of 1918. Nurses who had worked the wards without enough masks, without enough medicine, without enough of anything. Doctors who had written memos that went unanswered. Families who had buried 2 or 3 people in the same week, and then read in the paper that the city had handled the crisis well. These were the believers, not believers in anything supernatural. Believers in what they had seen with their own eyes. They did not need a theory. They had a parade and a death toll and a gap between the two that no amount of official language could close. Some of them spoke up. Some of them wrote letters. Some of them gave interviews years later when they were old and had nothing left to lose. And they said the same things they had always said, that the warning had been given, that the warning had been ignored, that people had died because someone decided the appearance of calm was worth more than the truth. What they gained by speaking was not much. No one was held to account. No one lost a job over it. The official story stayed the official story for a long time, but they had said it. They had put it into the record, and the record, as it turns out, is patient. The record waits. Philadelphia is a city of old brick and old memory. Walk through certain neighborhoods on a cool fall evening, and the light comes down between the row houses in long golden strips. The streets smell like dry leaves and old stone. It is a beautiful city. It has always been a beautiful city, and somewhere under all that beauty, in the basements of courthouses and the archives of hospitals and the private letters passed down through families, the autumn of 1918 is still sitting there, still waiting, still asking the same quiet question it has always asked. Who decided the parade was worth it? The doctors knew. That is the part that sits with you when you think about 1918 long enough. Not just that the sickness came, not just that it spread, but that there were men and women in white coats standing in hospital wards and military sick bays who understood exactly what they were looking at. And they were told to say nothing. Some of them obeyed. Some of them didn't. And the ones who didn't paid a price for it that was quiet and slow and hard to see from the outside. Think about what it means to be a doctor in wartime. You have sworn an oath. You have given your word in the oldest tradition of your profession that you will tell the truth about what you see, that you will protect the people in your care. And then someone with a higher rank and a louder voice tells you that the truth is inconvenient, that the war effort requires a different story, that the men need to keep moving and the ships need to keep sailing and the factories need to keep running and you need to keep your mouth shut. Some of them kept it shut, and the weight of that silence settled into the land around them like water settling into clay. There are places in this country that hold memory the way old wood holds smoke. You walk into them and you feel something you cannot quite name. A heaviness, a stillness that is not peaceful but watchful. The old military posts of the Great Plains are like that. The ones that are still standing, the ones that are half gone, their wooden buildings rotted down to the foundation, their parade grounds grown over with buffalo grass and thistle. Camp Funston is part of Fort Riley now. Fort Riley is still an active post. Out there on the Kansas plain, where the Smoky Hill River bends south. The land around it is wide and flat, and the sky above it is enormous. In winter, the wind comes down from the north with nothing to slow it, nothing to break it, and it moves across the grass in long silver waves like something breathing. Stand out there on a cold morning and the air smells like iron and frozen earth. The ground is hard. The sky is pale. The horizon goes on so long in every direction that you start to feel very small and very temporary. The land does not care about the official story. The land does not read press releases. It just holds what happened inside it, the way it holds everything else. Quietly, without comment. There are old photographs of the Camp Funston Hospital from the spring of 1918. Long wooden buildings with rows of cots stretching back into the shadows. Men lying side by side, their faces turned toward the camera or turned away. The floors are bare wood. The windows let in pale light. The nurses move between the rows like slow ghosts, their white uniforms bright against the dark walls. Those buildings are gone now, but the ground they stood on is still there. The soil remembers the weight of them. The grass grows differently in some of those old footprints, greener in wet years, paler in dry ones, as if the earth is still trying to work out what was pressed into it. The doctors who worked in those buildings wrote things down. That is what doctors do. They kept logs. They filed reports. They noted the dates and the symptoms and the numbers. And some of those reports traveled up the chain of command and disappeared. Not dramatically, not in a single bonfire, just slowly, quietly, the way things disappear when no one is looking and no one is asking. Other reports survived. They are in archives now, in boxes with careful labels, in rooms where the air is kept cool and dry to slow the aging of paper. Researchers have found them. Historians have read them. And what those reports say, in the careful language of military medicine, is that the men at Camp Funston were sick in a way that was unusual, in a way that was worth noting, in a way that someone, somewhere, decided was not worth sharing with the public. The doctors who wrote those reports are long gone. The men they treated are long gone. The wooden buildings where the sick lay in rows are gone. But the words are still there. Ink on paper, patient and still. The Kansas plain does not forget either. It just keeps breathing. The grass keeps moving in the wind. The river keeps running south. And the sky above Fort Riley stays wide and pale and watching, the way it has always watched, the way it will keep watching long after every story about 1918 has been told and told again. The soldiers wrote letters. That is what young men do when they are far from home, and the nights are long and cold. They wrote on whatever paper they could find, thin sheets, sometimes torn from notebooks, sometimes the back of an envelope. They wrote by candlelight and by lamplight, and by the gray filtered glow that came through canvas tent walls in the early morning. They wrote to their mothers, to their fathers, to girls they had known in small towns, whose names you have probably never heard. They wrote about the food and the mud and the strange accents of the French and the sound of guns in the distance, like summer thunder that never stopped. And some of them wrote about being sick. Not all of those letters made it home the way they were written. The army had censors, is not a secret. Every army in the war had them. Men whose job was to read the mail before it was sealed and sent, to look for anything that might help the enemy. Troop movements, supply routes, the names of officers. That made sense. That was the logic of war. But the censors also had another kind of eye. They were watching for anything that might lower morale, anything that might make the people back home afraid, anything that might make the war effort look fragile. A soldier writing home to say that half his unit was coughing blood, and the doctors didn't know why. That was the kind of thing that made people afraid. So some of those sentences disappeared. A thick black line drawn through the words. Sometimes whole paragraphs. The letter would arrive, and the family would hold it up to the light, trying to read through the ink, and they would see only darkness where the words had been. This happened in America. It happened in England. It happened in France and Canada and Australia. Wherever young men were writing home about what they were seeing and feeling, there were hands ready to black it out. The same pattern, different countries, different languages. The same thick line drawn through the truth. There is a long tradition of this in American history. It did not start in 1918, and it did not end there either. During the Civil War, newspapers were shut down for printing things the government did not want printed. During World War II, photographs of American dead were kept from the public for years. The logic was always the same. The people cannot handle this. The people must be protected from what is real. And so the real thing gets covered. And what remains is a clean and manageable version of events that never quite matches what the men who were there remembered. The soldiers who survived the flu and came home talked about it. Some of them, in the way that men who have seen hard things sometimes talk quietly at the edges of conversations when the children were in bed and the house was dark. They would say that the sickness had been everywhere, that it had moved through the camps like wind through dry grass, that the doctors had looked worried in a way that doctors were not supposed to look, that there had been orders, that certain things were not to be written down, that certain things were not to be said. Their families listened. And then those families told their own children. And those children grew up and told their children. And somewhere in that long chain of telling, the details got softer and the edges got blurred, the way all old stories do. But the shape of the thing stayed the same. The shape was something happened, and someone decided you should not know about it. That shape is older than 1918. It shows up in the stories of almost every great American disaster. The Johnstown flood, the Galveston hurricane, the Triangle Shirtwaist fire. Every time, there were people who knew more than they said. Every time, there were records that went missing or reports that were filed away in rooms where no one was likely to look. Every time, the official story and the story that the survivors told were not quite the same story. The soldiers of 1918 were part of that tradition without knowing it. They were writing their letters in the dark, and the censors were drawing their lines, and the families back home were holding the paper up to the light and wondering what had been taken from them. Some of those letters still exist in attics, in boxes that smell of cedar and old cloth, in the collections of small historical societies in towns you have never visited. The black lines are still there, patient and permanent. The words beneath them are gone forever, but the lines themselves are a kind of record. They tell you that something was there. They tell you that someone decided you should not see it. The letters are not the only things that survived. There are photographs, hundreds of them. The army took pictures of everything in those years. It was a new habit, a modern habit, the kind of thing that made officers feel like history was watching. They photographed the barracks at Camp Funston, the mess halls, the training grounds, the rows of young men standing at attention in the Kansas wind, their faces pale and serious, their uniforms still stiff and new. Some of those photographs ended up in the National Archives. Some ended up in regimental histories, printed in small editions that nobody read anymore. Some ended up in the collections of families who kept them in shoeboxes and never quite knew what they were looking at. Look closely at the ones from early 1918, not at the men in the foreground. Look at the background. You will see tents, long rows of canvas tents set up behind the permanent buildings, stretching out across the flat Kansas ground like a small city growing up overnight. Those Those tents were the overflow. The barracks were full. The sick bay was full. The army needed somewhere to put the men who were running fevers and couldn't stand up straight. And so they put them in tents out in the February cold, row after row, while the healthy men trained a few hundred yards away. The photographs don't say that. There is no caption that reads, "Overflow Sick Ward." The tents are just tents, but they are there in the background, patient and plain, if you know what you are looking for. There are also the records themselves, not the ones that went missing, the ones that stayed. The army kept meticulous files. Admission logs for the hospital at Camp Funston. Daily counts of sick men. Cause of illness when they could determine it. These records exist. Researchers have found them. And what they show is a spike. A sharp, sudden spike in respiratory illness beginning in the first week of March 1918. The numbers climb fast, faster than any ordinary cold or seasonal sickness would explain. The admissions log for March 11th alone shows over 100 men. By the end of the month, the number is in the thousands. The records are matter-of-fact about it. No alarm, no sense that anyone understood what they were watching. The entries are written in the same careful hand as the entries for sprained ankles and broken arms. Just numbers, just names, just dates. That calmness is its own kind of artifact. It tells you that no one at Camp Funston believed, in those early weeks, that they were standing at the beginning of something. They thought it was a bad season. They thought the men were tired and cold and crowded. They filed their papers and moved on. There is also a memo. It surfaces occasionally in discussions among historians, and it is a quiet, unremarkable document on its face. It was written by a medical officer at a stateside camp, not Funston, but one of the other large training facilities. Sometime in the spring of 1918, the memo recommends that reports of respiratory illness among enlisted men be consolidated at the regimental level before being forwarded to command. The stated reason is efficiency, paperwork reduction, the kind of administrative language that sounds perfectly reasonable until you think about what it means in practice. What it means is that the individual reports, the ones written by the doctors closest to the sick men would be summarized and filtered before anyone higher up saw them. The details would be smoothed away. The pattern would be harder to see. You can hold that memo in your mind the same way you would hold a stone you found on a riverbank. It is small. It is ordinary looking, but it has weight. There are also the objects, the physical ones, the kind you can actually put your hands on. Somewhere in a small museum in central Kansas, there is a doctor's bag that belonged to a camp physician from that era. Inside it, among the instruments and the bottles, there is a notebook. The notebook has entries from early 1918. Most of them are routine, but one entry, written in a cramped and hurried hand, describes a patient whose symptoms the doctor found unusual. The fever came on fast, the doctor wrote, faster than he had seen before. The lungs were involved from the very first day. He did not know what he was describing. He was just writing down what he saw, the way doctors do, the way people do when they are trying to make sense of something that doesn't quite fit the shape of anything they already know. He filed it away, and it waited there in the dark of that bag for 100 years. That notebook waited, and while it waited, the people who lived through what it described went home. They went back to small towns in Ohio and Georgia and Minnesota. They went back to farms where the corn still needed cutting and the animals still needed feeding. They went back to kitchens that smelled like wood smoke and coffee. They sat down at tables with their families, and they tried to explain what they had seen. Most of them couldn't. Most of them just went quiet and passed the bread and let the conversation move on to something else. But some of them talked, and the ones who talked, their words got carried forward. There is a woman in rural Iowa whose grandmother survived the second wave. She was 17 years old in the autumn of 1918. She watched her mother and her two brothers fall sick within the same week. She boiled water. She changed sheets. She pressed cool cloths to foreheads that burned like cast iron left on a stove. Her mother made it through. One brother did not. The grandmother never talked about the brother who died. Not once. Not in 60 more years of living. But she talked about the smell. She said the sickness had a smell to it. Sweet and wrong, she always said. sweet and wrong, like fruit left too long in the sun. That detail has been passed down now through 4 generations. The woman in Iowa heard it from her mother, who heard it from the grandmother herself. It has never changed. Sweet and wrong. Some things stay exactly the shape they were given. There is a family in Louisiana whose great-great-grandfather was a soldier. He came home from France in the spring of 1919. He was thin. He had a cough that stayed with him for 2 more years. He told his children that the sickness in the camps had been worse than the fighting. He said men died faster from the fever than from the guns. His children grew up believing him. His grandchildren grew up believing his children. By the time the story reached the present generation, nobody in that family had any doubt. The flu was part of the war. The war was part of the flu. They were the same thing, wearing different faces. 50 million people died. Some counts say more. The numbers are so large they stop feeling like numbers. They start feeling like weather, like something that happened to the sky rather than to people. But the people were people, every single one of them. There was a girl in Philadelphia who wanted to be a school teacher. There was a farmer in Kansas who had just bought his first piece of land. There was a young man in a trench outside of Verdun who had a photograph of his mother folded in his breast pocket. There was a child in a village in India who had never heard of a place called Camp Funston and never would. They all died of the same thing, and no one ever stood up and said, "Here is where it started. Here is what we knew. Here is what we chose not to say." No one answered for it. That is the part that sits heavy in the family stories. Not just the grief, though the grief is enormous. It is the silence that came after, the official silence. The way the government and the army moved on so quickly. The way the newspapers turned the page. The way the whole country seemed to agree, without agreeing, that this was something to get past rather than something to examine. People noticed that silence. Ordinary people sitting in ordinary kitchens noticed it the way you notice when someone changes the subject too fast. It felt like something being covered. It felt like a hand pressed flat over a wound. And so the family stories filled in the space that the official record left empty. They kept the names alive. They kept the details alive. The smell like overripe fruit, the fever that came on fast, the men who died in the night before anyone thought to write it down properly. These stories are not in any archive. They are not filed away in any government building. They live in the mouths of the people who carry them. They get told at Thanksgiving tables and at kitchen counters and on long drives between one small town and another. They change a little with each telling, the way all living things change, but the core stays the same. 50 million gone. No one answered, and the people who were left behind made sure, in the only way they could, that it would not be forgotten. Decades passed. The family stories kept moving from mouth to mouth. But somewhere, in the quiet corners of universities and research labs, a different kind of person was asking a different kind of question. Not who was to blame, not what the government knew. Something simpler and stranger than that. They wanted to know what the virus actually was, what it looked like, down at the level where living things become almost too small to see. They wanted to hold it in their hands, in a manner of speaking. And to do that, they needed to find it somewhere it had been preserved. The earth holds things for a long time. Cold earth holds them longer. There is a place called Breivik Mission on the western coast of Alaska. It sits on a narrow strip of land between two bodies of water, the Bering Sea on one side and a lagoon on the other. The sky there is wide and pale. The ground is frozen most of the year, hard as iron just a few inches down. In 1918, about 80 people lived there. They were Inuit people, and they had been living on that coast for generations, fishing and hunting, and keeping their own ways. In the fall of 1918, the flu came to Breivik Mission. It came fast, the way it always did. Within 5 days, 72 of those 80 people were dead. That is a number almost too large to hold. Nearly an entire village, gone in less than a week. The survivors buried the dead in a mass grave and marked it. The permafrost sealed it shut. The bodies stayed frozen in that dark ground for decades, preserved the way meat is preserved in a cold cellar, slowed down by the cold, until time itself seemed to pause around them. A scientist named Johann Hultin heard about that grave in 1951. He was a young man then, a graduate student from Sweden, studying in Iowa. He had been reading about the 1918 flu, turning the problem over in his mind the way you turn a stone in your hand, looking for the edge that makes sense of the shape. He thought that if the bodies in Breivik mission were frozen well enough, the virus might still be there, locked inside the tissue, waiting. He went to Alaska. He got permission from the village council. He dug. What he found was remarkable and heartbreaking in equal measure. The bodies were there, preserved by the cold, just as he had hoped. He took samples. He brought them back to his lab in Iowa. But the science of 1951 was not ready for what he was trying to do. He could not grow the virus from what he had found. The tools did not exist yet. He published a small paper quietly, and then he moved on. He became a pathologist. He built a life. He did not forget what he had seen in that frozen ground, but he set it aside. The way you set aside a question you cannot yet answer. 46 years went by. In 1997, a researcher named Jeffrey Taubenberger published a paper. He had been working with preserved tissue samples from 1918 flu victims, old samples kept in a government archive, and he had managed to sequence fragments of the virus's genetic code. It was a breakthrough, but the samples were incomplete. He needed more. He reached out to the scientific community. He published what he had. Johan Hultin, now in his 70s, read the paper. He wrote Taubenberger a letter. He said he knew where more samples might be found. He said he had been to Breivik mission before, and he thought he could go again. He paid for the trip himself. He flew to Alaska. He went back to the village council, explained what he was looking for, and asked again for permission. They said yes. He dug again, this time with a simple set of tools, working mostly alone. He was 73 years old, kneeling in the frozen Alaskan ground, looking for something that had killed 50 million people. He found a woman. She had been buried in the permafrost, and the cold had kept her well. Her lungs were still intact. He took samples with care and with a kind of reverence, the way you handle something that has waited a very long time for you. He packed them in ice. He sent them to Taubenberger's lab. Those samples changed everything. The scientists thought they knew. about the 1918 flu. The genetic code they pulled from that frozen tissue was unlike anything they had seen in a modern flu strain. It was old. It was strange. It pointed back in ways that still stir debate towards something that had crossed from animals to people not long before the first soldiers got sick in the winter of 1918. Picture yourself standing outside tonight, not in a city, not near a road, somewhere flat and wide and old, where the sky comes all the way down to the ground, and the stars are so thick they look like spilled salt on dark cloth. The air is cold, not bitter cold, but the kind of cold that settles into your coat and stays there. The kind that makes you breathe slow and quiet. That is where you are right now. The land around you is still. No wind, no traffic, just the soft sound of the earth settling into itself, the way old things do when no one is watching. Somewhere far off, a bird calls once and goes silent. The grass is pale and dry. The sky above you is enormous. You feel small in the best possible way, like a single word on a very long page. This is what Johann Halton felt, standing in that Alaskan village in the autumn of 1997. He had come back to a place he had visited 45 years before. The village of Breivik Mission sits on the edge of the Seward Peninsula, where the land runs out and the water begins. The Bering Sea is close enough to smell on certain mornings, cold and mineral and clean. The tundra stretches out in every direction, low and brown and ancient, dotted with frost and lichen, and the occasional dark shape of a rock that has been sitting in the same spot for 1,000 years. The permafrost under that ground is deep. It goes down farther than most people think, and it is cold enough, consistent enough, to hold things the way a hand holds something precious. It held that woman for nearly 80 years. It kept her lungs intact while the rest of the world forgot her name. When Halton knelt in that ground and worked with his simple tools, the sky above him would have been the same sky it always was. Wide, dark, full of stars that had no opinion about what was buried below them. The village was quiet. The people who lived there had given him permission, and they watched over what he was doing with the kind of quiet dignity that comes from knowing the land holds your ancestors. He worked carefully. He worked slowly. He was 73 years old, and he had waited half a century for this moment, and he was not going to rush it. The samples he pulled from that frozen tissue were small, delicate, almost impossibly fragile for something that had once moved through the world like a fire through dry grass. He packed them with ice. He labeled them. He sent them to a lab in Maryland, where Jeffrey Taubenberger and his team were waiting. What came back from that analysis was not what anyone expected. The genetic code of the 1918 flu was strange. Not just old, though it was old. Not just different, though it was different. It was something that seemed to sit at the edge of two worlds. Part human flu, part something that had come from birds or pigs, or some combination of creatures that had been living close together in a way that allowed the virus to move between them. The scientists looked at the sequence, and they looked at each other, and they said quietly that this thing had not been circulating in humans for very long before it exploded. It was new. It was new in 1918. It had crossed over from animals to people sometime in the months or years before that first sick cook walked into the mess hall at Camp Funston. Stand outside tonight and think about that. Think about how something invisible, something that had no name and no face and no intention, moved from a barnyard to a human body somewhere in the middle of America, and then moved from that body to 100 others, and then to 1,000, and then caught a ride across the Atlantic Ocean inside the lungs of young men who thought they were going to war. The stars above you have seen all of it. The cold air around you carries no memory of it. The ground beneath your feet holds its own quiet record of things that happened and were never fully explained. The woman in the permafrost waited 79 years to tell her story. She told it through her lungs, through her frozen tissue, through a sequence of genetic code that a scientist read like a letter written in a language almost too old to understand. She told it, and the scientists listened, and the world learned something true about where the worst pandemic in modern history had come from. And still, even now, the full story is not finished. the Fort Riley theory never really went away. It just went quiet for a while. It lived in the margins of medical journals. It lived in the footnotes that most people skipped. It lived in the memory of small towns across central Kansas, where old-timers sometimes mentioned it at kitchen tables, not as a scandal, but as a fact of life. Something happened here. Something started here, and the world moved on without ever fully saying so. But stories like this one have a way of coming back. In the 1990s, a historian named John Barry started pulling on the thread. He went to the archives. He read the letters. He looked at the dates. He traced the movement of sick men from Camp Funston outward across the country, and then across the ocean. He published a book in 2004 called The Great Influenza, and it landed like a stone dropped into still water. The ripples went wide. Suddenly, the Fort Riley theory wasn't just a footnote anymore. It was front-page news. It was on the radio. It was in classrooms. People who had never heard of Camp Funston were saying the name out loud. The town of Junction City, Kansas, sits just a few miles from where the camp once stood. It is a quiet place. Wide streets, flat land stretching out in every direction. The sky there is enormous. The kind of sky that makes you feel small in a way that is not unpleasant. The people who live there know the history. They have always known it, but knowing something and having the rest of the world suddenly care about it are two different feelings. Fort Riley itself is still an active military base. It has been there for over 150 years. Soldiers train there now just as they trained there in 1918. The land is the same land. The wind blows across the same flat Kansas plain. The old hospital buildings are long gone, replaced by newer structures, by roads and parking lots, and the ordinary architecture of a working military installation. But the ground remembers, even when the buildings do not. There is no monument to the 1918 outbreak at Fort Riley. No plaque marks the spot where Albert Gitchell reported to the infirmary on that March morning. No marker stands where the mess hall once was. The Army does not put up signs for things it would rather not explain. That is not a criticism. It is simply the way institutions work. They move forward. They do not linger. across the country, the renewed interest in the Fort Riley theory changed something in the way ordinary people thought about history. It reminded them that the official version of events is not always the complete version. It reminded them that silence can be a kind of answer. That when powerful people choose not to talk about something, that choice itself tells you something worth knowing. The flu of 1918 killed more Americans than every war the country had fought up to that point combined. That number is almost impossible to hold in your mind. 50 million people worldwide, 600,000 Americans, and for decades, the country barely talked about it. There were no national memorials, no annual days of remembrance. Families buried their dead and went back to work because the world demanded it. The grief went underground, the way grief sometimes does when there is simply too much of it to carry in the open. The second life of the Fort Riley theory gave people a place to put some of that grief. It gave them a story with a beginning, a specific morning, a specific man, a specific place in the middle of the American heartland where something changed forever. That kind of specificity is a gift, even when the story is a hard one, maybe especially then. Researchers still debate the exact origin. Some still point to Europe, some point to China. The science has not closed the door on any of these possibilities, but the Fort Riley theory has earned its place at the table. It is taken seriously now by serious people. It is taught in medical schools. It is cited in public health research. The sick cook who walked into the mess hall on March 4th, 1918, is part of the permanent record now. And the Kansas plain stretches on, wide and golden, and indifferent to human argument. The wind moves through the grass the same way it always has. The sky turns from blue to pink to the deep purple of early evening. Somewhere out there, under that enormous sky, the land holds the memory of what began here. It does not speak, but it does not forget. There are people who carry a story the way some people carry a photograph, folded up, worn at the edges, pulled out in quiet moments when the light is right and the room is still enough to hear it. Harold Voss was one of those people. He was born in 1931 in a small town outside of Junction City She had watched neighbors go to bed healthy and wake up blue. She had helped wrap bodies in sheets when the sheets ran out. She had stood at a window and counted the wagons going by. She told Harold about it when he was 7 years old. She sat him down at her kitchen table, poured him a glass of cold milk, and told him the whole thing the way you tell a child something true, plainly, without decoration. She told him the sickness started at the camp. She told him the army knew. She told him the records disappeared. Harold grew up and moved away. He went to Chicago in 1952 for work, then to Detroit, then eventually to a small apartment in Pittsburgh, where he lived alone for the last 30 years of his life. He worked in a machine shop. He was a quiet man. He kept to himself mostly, but he never stopped talking about the flu. He would bring it up at diners, at barbershops, at the long folding tables of church potlucks. He would lean in close and lower his voice just slightly, the way his grandmother had. He would say, "The records were destroyed on purpose." He would say, "My grandmother saw it with her own eyes, and she never lied to me once in her life." People listened. Some of them nodded. Some of them changed the subject. A few of them asked questions, and those were the ones Harold liked best. He kept a folder in his kitchen drawer. Inside it were photocopies of newspaper articles, handwritten notes, a few pages torn from a library book he probably should not have torn. He had a copy of a letter someone had written to a congressman in 1919, asking why the Army's early medical reports from Camp Funston were so difficult to obtain. The congressman never wrote back. Harold had that letter too. He was not a researcher. He had no degree. He could not tell you the names of the virologists who had studied the 1918 strain, or cite the papers published in medical journals. But he knew the shape of the story. He knew it the way you know a song you learned as a child. You might not remember all the words, but you remember the feeling of it. And the feeling Harold carried was this. Something happened in Kansas in the winter of 1918, and the people in charge decided the rest of the country did not need to know the details. He was not angry about it. That is the thing worth noting. He was not a bitter man. He did not pace around his apartment muttering about cover-ups. He was calm He was steady. He simply believed what his grandmother told him, and he thought other people deserved to hear it too. When Harold died in 2004, his neighbor found the folder in the kitchen drawer. The neighbor was a younger woman named Diane, and she had heard Harold's story more than once over the years. She kept the folder. She still has it, somewhere in a box in her basement in Pittsburgh. She has never done anything with it, but she has never thrown it away either. That is how a story survives. Not always through books or archives or official channels. Sometimes it survives in a kitchen drawer. Sometimes it survives because one person told another person at a table over a glass of cold milk. Sometimes it travels 1,200 miles from the Kansas Plain to a machine shop in Pittsburgh and keeps going from there, passed hand to hand like something fragile and worth protecting. Harold Voss never proved anything. He never found the smoking document that confirmed the records were gone on purpose. He never got the answer his grandmother's story seemed to be asking for, but he kept asking, and the asking itself is a kind of answer. The story did not die with him. It moved on the way stories do. It found new mouths to speak it and new ears to receive it. It adapted. It traveled. It settled into new places while keeping the shape of the old one. That is what legends do. They wander, and they do not forget where they came from. The flu left marks on everything it touched, not just on the people who died, on the ones who lived, too, on the country itself, on the way Americans thought about sickness and silence, and what their government owed them when things went wrong. Think about what that generation carried. They had watched their neighbors vanish in a matter of days. They had seen healthy men go blue in the face and stop breathing before the doctor could even arrive. They had buried children in October and parents in November, and come back to empty houses that still smelled like the people who used to fill them. And then they were told, quietly, firmly, to move on. The war was over. There was work to do. The country needed to heal. So they moved on. That was what people did then. You did not sit with grief the way we sit with it now. You folded it up and put it somewhere deep and went back to the fields, back to the factory floor, back to the kitchen. You kept going because stopping felt like giving up. And giving up was not something that generation knew how to do. But the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Doctors started noticing something strange in the years after 1918. The people who had survived the flu, especially the second wave, were not quite the same. Some had damaged hearts. Some had lungs that never fully opened again. Some had a kind of fog behind the eyes, a slowness that had not been there before. The virus had moved through them like a river through soft ground, and it had left channels behind, little carved out places where something used to be. There is a word scientists use now. They call it sequelae. It means the effects that linger after the main event is over. The aftershocks, the echo. The 1918 flu left sequelae in the bodies of millions of Americans, and those people passed something on to their children, not the virus itself, but the shape of a world that had been rearranged by it, a wariness, a knowledge carried somewhere below language that the ground could shift without warning. We are still living in that echo. Every time a new virus appears and governments argue about what to tell the public. Every time a scientist tries to sound an alarm and gets told to wait. Every time a city has to decide between keeping people safe and keeping the economy moving. The ghost of 1918 is in the room. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It is just there, the way an old injury aches when the weather changes. The question that stays open, the one that does not close no matter how many papers get written or archives get searched, is a simple one. It is almost too simple. Did the people in charge know what they were doing? Not whether they made mistakes. Mistakes happen in a crisis. Everyone makes mistakes. The question is whether they looked at what was happening at Camp Funston in the early weeks of 1918, looked at the numbers, looked at the pattern, and made a choice. A deliberate choice to keep it quiet, to let the troop ships sail, to let the parades go forward, to let the newspapers print something other than the truth. Because if they did, that changes the shape of the whole story. It means the silence was not confusion. It was a decision, and decisions have authors. They have names attached to them. They have reasons, even bad ones. And if that is true, then the 50 million people who died around the world did not simply fall to a virus that no one could have stopped. Some of them fell to a choice that someone made in a warm office far from the coughing wards. That is the door that will not close. You can walk away from this story. You can put it down and go to sleep and let the warmth of the night settle over you. And you should. The world is quieter now than it was in 1918. The fields outside are still. The roads are empty. Whatever is out there in the dark is not coming for you tonight. But somewhere in the American bones, in the deep marrow of this country's memory, that question is still sitting, waiting, not demanding an answer, just waiting to see if anyone will come back and ask it again. Someone always does. The story has been passed down too many times to stop now. It has traveled too far. It has been folded into too many kitchen drawers and spoken at too many tables to disappear. It is still moving, quietly, the way a river moves at night when no one is watching, but the water keeps going just the same. And that is how it always goes with the old stories. They do not end. They just go quiet for a while. They settle into the walls of old buildings and the pages of letters no one has opened in decades. They live in the names carved into stone in small-town cemeteries where the dates all cluster together. 1918, 1918, 1918, like a drumbeat that finally stopped but left an echo behind. The silence after a story like this one is a particular kind of silence. It is not empty. It is full of everything that was never said out loud, full of the reports that were filed and forgotten, full of the telegrams that arrived at front doors and changed everything, full of the doctors who knew something was wrong and wrote it down anyway, even when they were told not to. Those words survived. That is the thing about words written down in honest hands. They have a way of lasting longer than the people who wanted them gone. Camp Funston is still there, more or less. Fort Riley sits on the flat Kansas plain, just as it always has. The wind still moves across that ground the way it did in February of 1918, low and cold, and carrying the smell of dry grass and open distance. The old buildings are gone now, replaced by newer ones. The way armies always replace what came before. But the ground is the same ground. The sky above it is the same wide Kansas sky, pale blue in winter, deep and star-heavy at night. If you stood there on a quiet evening, you would not feel anything dramatic. No chill beyond the weather. No sense of weight or warning. It would just feel like a place. A flat, honest, American place where the light goes gold before it goes dark, and the horizon seems farther away than it should. That is how most of the places in this story feel now. Philadelphia, where the parade moved through the streets, and the hospitals filled up 3 days later, is a city of millions going about their ordinary lives. The trenches of France have been fields for 100 years. The frozen ground of Alaska, where the scientists dug carefully and found what they were looking for, is quiet again under its long white winters. The people are gone, nearly all of them. The last survivors of the 1918 flu passed away years ago, taking their memories with them. The smell of the sick wards, the sound of a camp full of coughing men, the feeling of a world that seemed to be coming apart at every seam all at once. What remains are the stories, the ones written down, the ones passed from mouth to ear across kitchen tables and back porches, the ones that researchers pulled from archive boxes and read under fluorescent lights, surprised to find how much was there, how much had simply been waiting to be found. The story of the 1918 flu is not a ghost story, but it has something in common with ghost stories. It is about something that refuses to fully leave, not because it is angry, not because it wants anything from you, but because it happened, and things that happen do not unhappen. They just move further back in the room. They stand in the corner and wait, and every so often, someone turns around and sees them standing there. That is what the scientists did when they went to Alaska. That is what the historians did when they started asking why the records were so thin, why the dates did not quite line up, why a cook named Albert Gitchell became a footnote in a story that killed 50 million people. They turned around. They looked at what was standing in the corner, and they wrote it down again in new words for new readers, so the story could keep moving. Because that is what stories do. They move. They find new people to carry them. They They cross the years, the way the flu crossed the ocean, quietly, invisibly, in the breath of one person, passing something to another. You are carrying it now, just a little, just the shape of it. The flat Kansas plain in winter, the mess hall filling up with sick men, the question that no one in a warm office ever had to answer. Carry it gently. Set it down when you need to. Let the night be soft around you. The fire is low. The room is warm. The world outside is still and dark and full of stars. Subscribe for a brand new mystery every night. One tap, and a new story is waiting for you tomorrow. Sleep well.